The restaurant smelled like rosemary and lies. I sat across from my husband of 23 years, watching him study the wine list with the kind of focus he usually reserved for his financial spreadsheets. The candlelight caught the gray at his temples. When had that appeared? And something in his smile felt wrong. Too wide. Too eager. My name is Catherine. I'm 51 years old, a retired architect living in Charleston, South Carolina. And until that Tuesday evening, I believed my marriage was simply tired, worn at the edges like an old photograph. What I didn't know was that my entire life was teetering on the edge of something far more sinister than marital fatigue. By the end of that night, I would discover a truth so devastating it would shatter not just my marriage, but my understanding of the man I'd slept beside for over 2 decades. "You look beautiful tonight," Marcus said, reaching across the table. His hand was cold when it touched mine. "Thank you." I pulled away, gently, adjusting the napkin in my lap. The restaurant was new, magnolia and vine, tucked into a converted warehouse in the French Quarter. Exposed brick, Edison bulbs, the kind of place that tried too hard to be romantic. "This place is lovely. How did you find it?" I wanted somewhere special. His eyes didn't quite meet mine. Somewhere we could reconnect. Reconnect. The word felt heavy between us, loaded with all the things we'd stopped saying years ago. Our marriage had become a series of polite exchanges, careful navigation around topics that might spark conflict. When had we stopped fighting? When had silence become easier than honesty? Here's what they don't tell you. YouTube only delivers the full story to people who prove they want it. That means subscribing. That means commenting. I know it seems small, but trust me, the twist that's coming is so unexpected that if you lose track of this video, you'll never forgive yourself. So do yourself a favor. Hit that subscribe button, right now, this second. Drop a comment with your location. Because the ending, it's not just surprising. It's the kind of thing that stays with you. So let me take you back to that moment, to the feeling of unease creeping up my spine like cold fingers. The waiter appeared, young, maybe 30, with dark hair and eyes that seemed to catalog everything. He had the kind of face that could disappear in a crowd, unremarkable except for the intensity of his gaze when it landed on me. "Good evening. My name is Julian, and I'll be taking care of you tonight." His voice was smooth, professional. "Can I start you off with something to drink?" "The lady will have a glass of the Pinot Grigio," Marcus said before I could answer. "I'll have scotch. Neat." I should have noticed then. I never drank Pinot Grigio. I preferred red wine, always had. But Marcus was already closing his menu, already moving forward with whatever script he'd written for this evening. "Actually," I started. "Trust me, darling. You'll love it." Marcus's smile didn't reach his eyes. The sommelier here is supposed to be excellent. Julian the waiter wrote nothing down. His eyes flicked to me, held for just a second too long, then away. "I'll bring those right out." The restaurant hummed around us. Low conversation, the clink of silverware against china, someone laughing at the bar. Normal sounds. Safe sounds. So why did my chest feel tight? "I know things have been difficult," Marcus said once we were alone. "Between my work and your retirement and everything. But I want to fix this, Catherine. I want us to be happy again." "Are we unhappy?" The question came out sharper than I intended. He flinched. "Aren't we?" The truth was complicated. We'd raised 2 daughters, Emma and Sophie, in a beautiful home on James Island. We'd built careers, taken vacations, hosted dinner parties. From the outside, we looked successful, content. But somewhere along the way, we'd become strangers who shared a bed and a last name, and very little else. Emma, our oldest at 28, had moved to New York 3 years ago, She called every Sunday, asked about my work, told me about her job at an advertising firm. Sophie, 25, was finishing her medical residency in Atlanta. She barely called at all anymore. Julian returned with our drinks. The wine glass gleamed in the candlelight, pale liquid catching the flame. Marcus's scotch sat dark and heavy in its tumbler. "Are you ready to order?" Julian asked. "Yes, I'll have the sea bass," Marcus said, "and the lady will have the chicken." "Actually, I'd like the salmon," I corrected. When had Marcus started ordering for me? Julian wrote it down. "Excellent choice." He picked up my menu, and that's when I felt it, the slightest pressure of something sliding beneath my bread plate. So subtle I almost missed it. "Thank you," I said automatically. As Julian walked away, I reached for my wine. Marcus watched me, his expression unreadable. "To us," he said, raising his glass. "To new beginnings." I lifted my wine, but something stopped me from drinking. Maybe it was the way Marcus was staring. Maybe it was the strange weight I'd felt beneath my plate. Maybe it was just instinct, that ancient animal part of the brain that recognizes danger even when the conscious mind hasn't caught up yet. "Excuse me," I said, setting down the glass. "I need to use the restroom." "Now?" Marcus's voice sharpened. "Can it wait?" "No." I stood, legs unsteady. "I'll be right back." His hand shot out, gripping my wrist. "Catherine. Marcus." I looked down at his fingers, then up at his face. "Let go." He released me slowly, and I could feel his eyes on my back as I walked away. In the dimly lit hallway leading to the restrooms, I pressed myself against the wall and pulled out the note from beneath my plate. My hands were shaking as I unfolded it. The words were printed in careful block letters. "Your husband poisoned your drink. Do not go back to that table. Meet me in the kitchen. Now." The hallway tilted. Or maybe it was me. I read the note 3 times, trying to make the words mean something different, trying to find the joke, the misunderstanding, the rational explanation. Marcus, my husband, the man who'd held my hand through my father's funeral, who'd stayed up all night with me when Emma had pneumonia at age 6, who'd built me a drafting table in the garage when I'd complained about not having enough workspace. That Marcus couldn't have poisoned my drink. Could he? I thought about his strange behavior these past few weeks. The late-night phone calls he took in his office with the door closed. The way he'd insisted on this dinner. His unusual enthusiasm about reconnecting. His certainty about what I would drink, what I would eat. His grip on my wrist, desperate to keep me from leaving the table. My phone was in my purse, back at the table. I had no way to call for help. No way to know if this was real or some elaborate prank. The kitchen. Door swung open, and Julian appeared. Up close, I could see the tension in his jaw, the way his eyes scanned the hallway. "We need to move. Now." He took my arm, not roughly but firmly. "Your husband is watching the restroom entrance." "I don't understand. I'm not a waiter." He guided me through the kitchen, past startled cooks and clattering pans. "I'm a private investigator. Your daughter Emma hired me 2 weeks ago." Emma. My responsible, careful Emma. We burst through the back exit into an alley. The November air hit my face, cold and sharp. Julian pulled out his phone, already dialing. "What did Emma tell you?" I demanded. "Why would she—" "Your husband has a $3 million life insurance policy on you," Julian said, not looking up from his phone. "He took it out 6 months ago. Emma only found out because she still has access to the family account records. She saw the monthly payments and got suspicious. $3 million. The number echoed in my head, surreal and enormous. That doesn't mean... He's been having an affair for 8 months, Julian continued, with a woman named Vanessa Chen. 29 years old, works at his firm, she's pregnant. The world lurched sideways. I grabbed the wall to steady myself. Pregnant. Emma hired me to follow him, document everything for divorce proceedings. But 3 days ago, I intercepted an email exchange between your husband and someone on the dark web. Julian's voice was tight. He was inquiring about untraceable poisons, something that would mimic a heart attack in a woman your age. I couldn't breathe. The alley was spinning, and I thought I might actually faint for the first time in my life. There's a patrol car 2 minutes away, Julian said. Emma's on her way from the airport. She caught the first flight when I told her about tonight. The wine, I whispered. He was so specific about the wine. Probably because he needed to know exactly what you'd be drinking. Easier to calculate the dosage. Julian's expression softened. I'm sorry. I know this is... Why didn't Emma just call me? My voice cracked. Why go through all this? She tried, last week, but your husband answered your phone and told her you were in the shower. When she tried your cell, he said you'd left it at home. She realized he was monitoring your communication. Julian put his phone away. She was trying to protect you without tipping him off. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. I thought about the past 6 months. Marcus's sudden interest in my health, insisting I see a cardiologist for routine tests. The way he'd taken over managing our medications, including my vitamins. How he'd suggested we update our wills, make sure everything was in order. How carefully he'd been planning this. The police will need your statement, Julian said, and they'll want to test the wine. I swapped your glass before I brought the note, replaced it with a clean one. Your husband doesn't know. Yet. A car screeched into the alley. Emma's rental. She burst out, running toward me, and I caught her in my arms. She smelled like airplane air and her childhood lavender shampoo, and she was crying. Mom. Oh God, Mom. I'm so sorry. I should have told you sooner, but I didn't want you to think I was crazy, and I needed proof, and... Shh. I held her tighter than I had in years. You saved my life. The police arrived. They found Marcus still at the table, checking his watch, growing agitated. When they tested the wine glass Julian had removed, they found enough ricin to kill me 3 times over. Ricin, tasteless, odorless, and in the right dose, almost impossible to detect in an autopsy. My death would have looked like cardiac arrest. Natural causes for a 51-year-old woman. He'd researched it carefully, planned it perfectly. Almost. What he hadn't planned for was Emma's thoroughness, her refusal to ignore her instincts when the insurance policy didn't make sense, her willingness to spend her savings hiring a private investigator, her courage to act even when she wasn't sure anyone would believe her. The trial took 8 months. Marcus's lawyer tried to argue entrapment, insufficient evidence, reasonable doubt. But the email exchanges were damning. The affair was documented. The life insurance policy spoke for itself. Vanessa Chen, his pregnant girlfriend, testified that Marcus had told her I was already dead, that I'd died of a heart condition, and he was, just waiting for the estate to settle before they could be together publicly. She'd believed him. She'd believed everything. Marcus got 25 years. I stood in the courtroom when the verdict was read and felt nothing. No satisfaction, no relief. Just exhaustion and a strange kind of grief for the man I thought I'd married. The man who'd never really existed. Sophie came home from Atlanta for the trial. She stayed for a month after, sleeping in her old room, helping me pack up the house on James Island. We didn't talk much about Marcus. What was there to say? Instead, we talked about her patients, her work, the attending physician she was seeing. Small things, real things. Emma visited every other weekend. She'd quit her job in New York, Move to a remote position so she could live anywhere. She was thinking about Charleston, she said. Being closer. I sold the house. Too many ghosts. Too many memories that had been lies all along. 6 months after the trial, I bought a small, studio apartment in downtown Charleston in a converted cotton warehouse with floor-to-ceiling windows. I set up my drafting table, the one Marcus had built, and started designing again. Small projects at first. A backyard deck for Sophie's friend. A kitchen renovation for Emma's coworker. Then bigger things. A community center in North Charleston. A library expansion in Somerville. I was working late on a Thursday when someone knocked on my studio door. Julian stood in the hallway, holding 2 cups of coffee. "I was in the neighborhood," he said. "Thought you might need a break." I hadn't seen him since the trial. He'd testified, professional and thorough, then disappeared back into whatever shadows private investigators inhabited. "How did you find me?" I asked, but I took the coffee. "It's literally my job to find people." He smiled, and it transformed his face completely, made him look younger, less haunted. "Can I come in?" We talked for 3 hours, about his work, his life, about mine. He'd been a detective with Charleston PD for 10 years before going private. Divorced, no kids. He'd started the investigation business because he was good at seeing patterns, noticing the details everyone else missed. "Like notes under bread plates," I said. "Like that." He studied me over the rim of his coffee cup. "You're doing better than I expected, than most people would." "I don't know what I'm doing," I admitted. "Most days I just wake up and put one foot in front of the other. But I'm here. I'm alive. That's something." "That's everything," he said quietly. Julian started stopping by on Thursdays, sometimes with coffee, sometimes with takeout, once with a bottle of wine that we both stared at for a full minute before laughing, slightly hysterical. I didn't know if this was friendship or something else. Didn't know if I was ready for something else. But I knew I liked the way he listened, the way he noticed things. Not just danger, but the small joys. The way light hit my drafting table. The sketch of a treehouse I was designing for Emma's future kids. "You're going to be okay," he said one evening, standing at my window watching the sunset paint the city gold and pink. "I am okay," I corrected. "Right now, in this moment, that's all I can promise." He turned to look at me, and something in his expression made my breath catch. "That's enough," he said. "That's more than enough." Emma got married in the spring. A small ceremony in Waterfront Park. Cherry blossoms in her hair, Sophie as her maid of honor. I walked her down the aisle in a dress I'd designed myself, soft blue, like the ocean at dawn. Marcus wasn't there. Would never be at any of our celebrations again. And I found I could live with that. Could even, on my best days, feel grateful for the empty space where he'd been. Room to breathe, room to become someone new. Julian came to the wedding as my guest. We danced slowly to jazz music while the sun set over the harbor, and when he pulled me closer, I let him. "Thank you," I whispered. "For what?" "For the note. For seeing what no one else saw." "Your daughter saw it," he said. "She knew something was wrong. She saved you, Catherine. All I did was help." "Then thank you for helping." He smiled against my hair. "Anytime." I'm 52 now. I design buildings and drink coffee on my balcony and call my daughters more than I probably should. Julian and I have dinner twice a week, sometimes at his place, sometimes at mine. We're taking it slow, learning each other, building something careful and true. Some nights I still wake up thinking about that restaurant, the candlelight, the wine glass, how close I came to not seeing another sunrise. But then I breathe, feel the cool air from my open window, hear the distant sound of the harbor, and remember, I'm here. I'm alive. I'm building a life that's wholly mine. And that, after everything, feels like the greatest victory of all.